News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Monica Rix. Iran's president says officials will listen to protesters, but rioters are trying to destroy the entire society. Protests have been rocking the country for weeks now, and at least 116 people have died. President Trump has warned the U.S. will act if Iranian protesters are harmed, but Iran's firing back. Lawmakers chanting death to America in Parliament overnight after Iran's speaker said the U.S. military and Israel would be legitimate targets if America strikes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he wants to gradually end U.S. military aid to his country over the next decade. Netanyahu made those comments in an interview with The Economist. He says that while Israel deeply appreciates the aid, its economy is growing. The U.S. currently gives Israel about $3.8 billion a year in military aid. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum says she's sending her foreign minister to meet with Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss deeper security ties. The move comes as President Trump threatens Mexico, Greenland, and Colombia following last week's operation in Venezuela.
The cartels are running Mexico. It's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country.
Sheinbaum warns U.S. military action in Mexico would be a grave violation of the country's sovereignty. Meantime, Germany could set up a joint NATO mission soon to monitor and protect security interests in the Arctic region, which would include Greenland. German officials have called on the U.S. to respect the Danish territory's sovereignty, as well as international law.
Justice for me!
Thousands marched in Minneapolis and other cities nationwide yesterday, denouncing the fatal ICE shooting of Renee Good.
It's our country, our democracy, and we have to be out here to defend it and fight for it.
That man in Chicago. The Trump administration insists the agent acted in self-defense, but Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey wants ICE out. State leaders also want federal cooperation to investigate the shooting. And Congress could intervene soon with possible funding cuts and policy changes to ICE. Federal Reserve policymakers could give us some insight on their next move this week, though investors are lowering bets now on a possible interest rate cut later this month following December's weaker-than-expected jobs report. U.S. employers added just 50,000 jobs, and the unemployment rate fell to 4.4%. Claudia Sahm is chief economist at New Century Advisors.
There were some reasons to think that maybe the November number, the 4.6%, was somewhat elevated with the government shutdown ending, and so it is reassuring to see some of that come back off, but it has risen over the course of the year. That is problematic.
Claudia Sahm with New Century Advisors on Bloomberg Surveillance. She says future rate cuts will rest on how the labor market performs in the coming months, but officials are worried inflation is still too high. Big banks could set the tone on Wall Street this week. Bloomberg's Charlie Pellett explains.
Results from the nation's biggest banks will give us the first glimpse into how Wall Street navigated the last months of 2025 amid President Trump's trade wars and ongoing geopolitical tensions. Betsy Graysick is global head of banks at Morgan Stanley.
Our setup is positive for Tuesday kickoff. And what I think matters is the outlook here for earnings, as well as the backlog building in the capital markets.
JP Morgan Chase reports Tuesday. Citigroup, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo all report on Wednesday. Charlie Pellett, Bloomberg Radio.
X's algorithm is going public. Elon Musk announced the platform will be open source starting next weekend, which means we'll see the code used to decide what posts and ads are recommended to users. No word on what pushed that change, but X has been hit with all kinds of complaints over the years over misinformation, poor content moderation, and a lack of transparency. Stellantis' Jeep brand is mounting a turnaround bid now by cutting prices. Here's Bloomberg's Karen Moskow.
The SUV brand has simplified its lineup, offering fewer model iterations and reducing upcharges. Take the Wrangler. Jeep has both trimmed base prices and slashed the cost of configuring its Halo vehicle with extra options. A Wrangler Sport S will now cost you $1,350 less than it did the prior model year. While the initial response has been tepid, stabilizing the brand has been a top priority for Stellantis. Jeep still has a long way back to its heyday, though. Its share of the SUV market dropped to 5.6% last year, according to Edmunds. Karen Moskow, Bloomberg Radio.
The Golden Globes air later tonight to celebrate Hollywood's brightest. One battle after another leads the film categories with 9 nominations, and HBO's The White Lotus tops TV nods with 6. The show starts at 8 p.m. Eastern on CBS. And the so-called holy grail of comic books, a Superman #1, just sold at auction for a record $15 million. It sold for just 10 cents back in 1938. This is the same comic that was once bought by and stolen from actor Nicolas Cage. It was found years later in a storage unit in California. And that's news when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Monica Rix, and this is Bloomberg.